Thanks, Jimmy, and thanks to the Chamber for inviting me and for everybody turning out today. I want to try to make this more of a conversation where I hear from you. You get to hear from me all the time, speeches, etc. I can tell you a little bit about what we've been hearing as we go around the state. We hear from businesses that think the economy's picking up and they're ready to go but can't hire people. It's probably the number one complaint, that if the government wage exceeds the market wage, if the wage is higher for not working, people will choose not working. And that's kind of where we are. For about a year, the wage for not working was about $50,000 a year. It's a little over $300 for unemployment here. And then you get another $600, it's about $1,000 a week. That's essentially $50,000 a year. That's come down a little bit, but it's still at about $35,000 a year. So if you're looking to hire anybody less than $35,000 a year, you're having trouble getting workers. You've seen the signs. My wife pointed this out to me from the internet. It's like, two people beleaguered in a McDonald's with a sign saying, "Please be patient with us. We're the only people that came to work today." And that's a problem. It's also a problem ultimately for society to institutionalize unemployment, because work is a good thing and idleness is a bad thing, and it leads to a lot of other problems. If you got 20% of your community not working, you got 20% of your community potentially becoming a problem, in many different ways. So I think that's the number one problem we need to fix. The hard part is that the biggest syndrome in Washington is what I call the big heart, small brain syndrome. And they want to help people. And it's like, well, how do you say, well, don't you care about the unemployed? Don't you want to give them something? But what if the unintended consequence is you actually are hurting the very people you want to help? A good example of that was when normally the taxes for unemployment last about 26 weeks. You pay a tax, it's sort of a program that kind of works. It creates a basic safety net, not a generous one, but one where people can exist till they can get their next job. The problem is that if you extend that, like we did in 2009, we extended it to 99 weeks. They did study after study. And if two people come in and apply for a job with you, and I've been out of work 99 weeks, Clay's been out of work 10 weeks, who do you hire? You're suspicious of the guy that's been out of work 99 weeks that I lost my work ethic or I haven't been trying very hard. 10 weeks seems more reasonable. And so every study shows that the 10-week person gets hired. So the one you have sympathy for and you've let him go this long or her this long, really now you've made them a non-worker. And eventually they've just become part of the non-working public. They talk about the labor force participation. It's like 62%. That means like 38% of people aren't doing something. And we don't want more of that. We want less of that. So those are just things we need to realize. But we have to realize that the big heart isn't always what you need. You got to have, the capacity to see the unintended consequences. The same is true of the COVID relief. If you do a poll and say, did you like getting $2,000? Surprisingly, 90%, I'm surprised only 90%, but 90% of people liked getting a check. But what are the unintended consequences? That we might destroy the currency, or that we might have a general elevation of prices through inflation. That's the other thing I'm hearing from small businesses as we go around Kentucky is like, one guy over in Mayfield said, I've got a pizza place, and said, but cheese has gone up 30%, and this has gone up 30%, and I can't get workers. And so we're seeing these problems. The Fed and the talking heads on TV say it's transitory, that it's all sort of backed up demand that's sort of just getting crunched through the system. Maybe. Or maybe we find out in the next 6 months that we're going to have generalized inflation, that they've just flooded so much currency in there. And it's also one of these long-term unintended consequences. I liked getting a $2,000 check. Well, what if a year later my purchasing power has gone down by $2,000? Am I really richer? And even with low inflation, the official measurement for the last decade has been 1.7% a year. Well, that's 17% a decade. Did everybody last decade get a 17% raise? And that's why we see people in the middle class and lower middle class saying, I'm not any better off. And it's because we offer them free stuff, but in exchange for this free stuff, they lose their purchasing power, which they don't see in a very slow fashion. And in the end, they're not any better off. And why am I not any better off? So we just have to think through these things and make more difficult decisions. Interestingly, I think it's 25 governors have now said they're not going to take the extra add-on for unemployment because it's so devastating to their community. I don't think our governor's piped up on that. But, I do think that these are difficult questions. But I worry about the debt we've incurred, but I'm also always and continuously amazed at the resilience of capitalism and the ability of the economy, the private economy, to overcome even some of the worst impediments that government places in its way. So I think we still have great hope as a nation. We need to band together and make sure we don't let a generation come in that believes socialism is okay. Some of the studies show that 50% of young people think we ought to try socialism. Apparently they haven't read much of the history of socialism, but I think it's important that we know that that feeling is out there as you talk to young people, either your kids or other kids in the community, that we need to know how we became this great and prosperous nation. And we are an incredibly great and prosperous nation, but it came from capitalism, largely being left alone, leaving the prices alone, leaving the price of wages alone, and letting the market function. And it's an amazing, efficient engine of capitalism.
If you need assistance with federal agencies, please contact our Bowling Green office or visit our website.